Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are wading deep into a collective feeling that has become almost unavoidable. This pervasive sense that something fundamental about modern life, about service technology, has just gone completely off the rails over the last few years.
It really has. And it's more than just, a vague sense of pessimism.
Right.
And that's what makes the sources we've gathered so powerful. They capture this widespread frustration that basic functionality, basic competence.
That used to just be a given.
Exactly. The cornerstones of society.
Yeah.
And now they feel entirely optional or, sometimes impossible to find. Every day feels like an unnecessary transaction.
It does. And we're not talking about like minor annoyances, a slow queue at the store or something.
No.
We're talking about core infrastructure, essential services, daily interactions feeling genuinely broken, forcing us to spend so much time navigating these just unnecessary bureaucratic or digital hurdles.
And what's really compelling, I think, is where this observation is coming from now.
Yeah, this is the key.
That's where the systemic nature of the problem becomes, undeniable. One of our key reference points was a video from a creator named Jaden Animations.
Who is what, late Gen Z, early millennial?
Right in that zone. And when even this younger demographic, who grew up entirely in the digital age, is noticing and confirming this widespread.
The same stuff older people have been complaining about for years.
Precisely. It validates that this is a true, universal, systemic issue. It's not just, nostalgia for the good old.
And because this decline is so prevalent, the sources actually give it a name, a single, very blunt, and highly descriptive term.
Introduced by writer Cory Doctorow.
Yes, inshitification.
It's a term that it resonates because it speaks directly to the experience. It defines this process where services, products, systems are deliberately degraded.
Deliberately.
In quality, functionality, reliability, often bit by bit, to maximize corporate profit at the expense of you, the user.
And the sources are very clear on the timeline here.
Yes. The crucial context is that while this degradation, this inshitification, was definitely underway before the pandemic,
right,
the 2 or 3 years of that global crisis just acted like an accelerator.
A massive, unexpected shock to systems that were already fragile.
Exact. The systems were already engineered to operate on these razor-thin margins of competence.
Stripped down for efficiency and profit.
Precisely. And when the pandemic hit, that reserve capacity just vanished. Supply chains snapped, the bare minimum of human oversight. The whole infrastructure, from customer service to tech maintenance, it was pushed past its break.
And unlike a broken bone, it hasn't properly healed.
Not at all.
So our mission today is to unpack where this systemic decline is most obvious. We're moving beyond just general complaints and looking at the specific mechanisms driving them.
The way technology tracks us.
The total collapse of customer service, and most critically, the rise of what the sources call corporatism in essential sectors like health and utilities.
Where the consumer is now viewed purely as a revenue source.
A paycheck, not a person needing help.
We're basically charting the map of modern life, where convenience became a hidden trap, and where basic human competency was systematically sacrificed at the altar of maximizing shareholder value.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with the technological sphere, which is, I think, for many people the most frustrating because it promises simplicity.
But delivers friction, constant friction.
Right, and our sources highlight a really terrifying dependency that we now all live under. It's the theory that if the internet went down today, terminally,
society would genuinely seize up.
We would be completely screwed.
And that theory is chillingly simple because it's true. Nothing works anymore without connectivity.
Nothing. Your car, your bank account.
The grocery store loyalty card, the thermostat in your own house, everything is routed through a remote server. This forced mandatory reliance on a constant connection is the first hallmark technology.
And this fragility, it explains a lot of the social trends we're seeing, especially among younger people.
It really does. They are the first generation to grow up fully seeing these technological failures and the excessive friction caused by this mandatory connect.
So they're the ones pushing back.
And this is exactly why the sources note a desire among Gen Z to return to a more simple analog time. They look at things like vinyl records, physical books, older cars.
And what do they say?
Permanence, they troll. Connectivity, in their experience, isn't liberation. It's mandatory dependence, and often it's mandatory payment.
A dependency that is enforced by this just excessive number of apps required to make basic things function.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about simple, everyday tasks that have now become these multi-step digital hurdles where you need 3 different authentication methods just to pay a bill you've been paying for a decade.
The banking anecdote from the sources is the perfect illustration of this decline in functional competence and the intentional dismantling of local control.
Okay, so what happened?
The source describes Needing a new debit. I mean, a totally routine task. You go to your local branch, you sit there, you wait for half an hour.
Expecting the simple, immediate transaction you've had countless times before.
Right, in any community. And then, after that wait, the realization hits. They're told the local branch doesn't even have the capability to print or provide the card there anymore. It has to be mailed from some central location.
Taking days.
Days. And this is in stark contrast to how things used to operate. The sources emphasize that even in a smaller, non-metropolitan bank branch, you could walk
And get it done.
Within 15 minutes, the card could be printed, encoded, pulled from the safe, and handed. That local, immediate competence, that service capacity, it's been intentionally withdrawn.
And why? For what reason?
Because the bank saves money by centralizing the service. It makes the local branch deliberately useless, and it forces you online, where they can track your usage and push you toward more digital products.
So the inefficiency we feel is often just a side effect of a company achieving efficiency for themselves.
That's it.
They're pushing the cost and the friction onto us, the consumer.
That is the entire mechanism of inshitification. And this push into the digital realm, it's often designed to establish mandatory continuous payments for existing goods.
Which brings us to the insidious nature of subscription creep.
Yes.
We've gone from buying a product to renting its features. And the sources highlight the absurdity of modern vehicle ownership.
You buy a car, you pay full price for the hardware.
And then you're asked to pay a subscription service just to run its basic built-in functions like heated seats or remote start.
It's the ultimate nickel and diming of ownership. It transforms a capital asset into a permanent revenue stream for the manufacturer. And this is compounded by the issue of digital obsolescence.
Right.
It's no longer the physical object failing. It's the software update that breaks otherwise functional physical objects.
Forcing you into replacement.
Exactly.
And this is where the specific, detailed anecdote of the elliptical machine from the sources is just invaluable.
Purchased during the peak of the pandemic, so it's only about 5 years old. Mechanically, it's sound. It's perfectly functional for its intended purpose.
But it's a smart elliptical.
Right. It requires a software update to function optimally. And here's the core failure. The company did not build in sufficient long-term hardware capacity.
So what happened?
The update they released is too large to fit on the machine's existing internal storage. So the machine gets stuck halfway through the process.
The internal computer is essentially bricked.
Bricked. The result is that the user can no longer automatically control the speed and incline via the programming screen, which relies on the functional software.
So now you have to do it manually.
You're relegated to controlling the speed manually, losing the core paid for. The functionality is crippled not by wear and tear, but by forced incompatibility.
And the manufacturer's implied or often explicit solution is simple.
Buy a new one. They knowingly push updates that are incompatible with older, yet still fun hardware.
So it's planned.
It ensures that once you are 5 years into ownership, you are locked into a cycle of replacement driven not by mechanical, but by forced strategic digital failure designed right into the product.
It transforms you from an owner into a continuous renter. This is the inshitification of hardware.
They are selling a machine designed to be digitally bricked on a predictable, profitable time.
And this mandatory connectivity, it have very real hazard, especially when the digital controls replace physical analog.
The sources note the specific complaint about the lack of physical gauges and controls in new items, particularly modern cars.
Right.
We are now entirely reliant on software updates that are often forced upon us, sometimes without warning.
And the absurdity noted in the sources is terrifying.
Right.
A crucial car update might fail to install safely while the vehicle is parked in your garage.
But then when the buggy software decides it needs to execute again, it could shut the vehicle down entirely.
In the middle of the road.
In the middle of the road. The removal of physical redundancy, the gauges, the manual control, in favor of a consolidated, digitally controlled platform, introduces dangerous points of systemic failure in items designed fundamentally for safety and reliability.
If your speedometer relies on an external server connection, or your steering relies on a forced buggy path, you have completely lost control
Of your property and your...
All right, moving from failing machines and mandatory apps to failing service and the people providing it, we have to tackle the customer service collapse, which is maybe the most immediate daily experience of this inshitification.
It is. This is a collapse that spans every single sector. The sources acknowledge the common factor: high turnover due to low wages, burnout, lack of training.
Right, the usual suspects.
But regardless of the cause, the result is a massive decline in quality across nearly all service jobs.
It's truly the service crapshoot. That's what the sources call it.
That's a great term for it.
They contrast the pre-pandemic norm, where it was a basic given that a cashier knew how to operate a register,
Or a food service worker knew the minimum required basics of their job.
with the current situation. Now you're essentially rolling the dice. on whether the person attempting to help you possesses the foundational knowledge to do the bare minimum.
And that issue of high turnover is circular and destructive. As service standards drop, customer friction rises exponentially.
Which leads to more exhausted, frustrated workers.
And more rapid turnover, which just feeds the cycle of systemic incompetence.
And the corporate response isn't to invest in better wages or training.
No, it's to further automate and outsource, making the problem even.
Now, the sources do raise a contentious observation here regarding the perception of labor and compensation.
Yes.
Suggesting that some workers now want to be paid 3 times as much to do a third of the work that they used to do.
And we have to recognize that this statement reflects the perception of reduced productivity and increased demands on,
which contributes heavily to this overall feeling of failure and frustration.
And it's an important point for discussion because it highlights the complex. Is the worker truly less motivated, or are they being set up
by corporate policies that demand high productivity while minimizing training, staff, and pay?
Often, the low competency is a symptom of corporate indifference to providing adequate resources. But you, the consumer, experience it as individual failure, regardless of the cost.
And this profit motive, it really crystallizes when we look at essential service utility, things required for modern life.
Utility companies and essential infrastructure are now being actively broken by automation, driven by that singular goal of maximizing corporate profit.
With terrible consequences for the...
This is a critical transition to understand. Many utility companies, once municipally owned or heavily regulated, are now corporate or privately owned entities.
So the priority shifts
entirely away from reliable customer care and maintaining infrastructure towards immediate shareholder return. This leads directly to automating critical functions, often without adequate human review.
As demonstrated by the source anecdote.
Exactly.
So let's detail these specific automation errors because they perfectly illustrate this systemic failure. First, the water shutoff incident.
The source describes a property being used only minimally as an office, so the water usage was consistently far below the minimum payment threshold. Yet, due to a glitch in the automation software, the account was set to the wrong service program. This error, a simple programming mistake, led to the system flagging the account for non-payment and shutoff.
Despite the actual usage being negligible, a simple human check would have stopped it instantly.
But because there was no human oversight driven by the desire to cut costs, the water was shut off anyway.
A completely unnecessary service interruption caused entirely by a lack of human oversight.
Driven by the profit motive to run lean, and the power company incident is even more immediate and shocking.
What happened there?
A payment was made by the consumer, but due to a glitch on the power company's internal system, the payment was applied to the wrong property record.
So the automated action was
instantaneous and brutal. The system, seeing an unpaid balance, triggered an immediate shutoff. The source describes literally getting the official notice.
And then the truck shows up.
Almost instantly to cut the power. All because automation took over and prevented any human from checking the payment history or recognizing a known account.
Or just providing a grace period.
It's the removal of human judgment. That ability to say, wait a minute, this customer paid yesterday. The system is showing an error. That's the most damaging part.
The system prioritizes immediate automated cost-saving action over basic fairness or competence.
And this loss of human mediation is further reinforced by the anecdote about the local internet provider.
Right, the customer used to have a good rapport with the local rep, the one person who could actually solve problems.
And that representative openly lamented the corporate strategy. They said everything is being outsourced to what they dismissively called Indian AI.
This isn't just about moving call centers.
No, it's about destroying local infrastructure and local knowledge. That representative confirmed that if you complain now, nothing gets done.
A local control is gone.
Completely gone. Yeah. When automated systems fail, there is no human safety. The corporate owners are chasing maximum profit by employing fewer, less empowered people, automating everything, and pocketing the mess.
Regardless of the catastrophic drop in service quality for you, the paying customer.
The profit motive always wins.
And our experience always loses. This brings us to the core philosophical and financial underpinning of all this. The shift from, standard capitalism to a system the sources call corporatism.
And that distinction is not just academic. It is critical to understanding why things feel so broken.
So how do they define it?
Traditional capitalism, in theory, relies on competition, innovation, and consumer choice to drive quality. Corporatism, as described in the sources, is different.
It's where massive, often monopolistic companies control entire sectors,
operate on the bare minimum or less, and view the consumer purely as a static paycheck.
These giants control the whole ecosystem, so they effectively eliminate meaningful competition.
Which makes it nearly impossible for you to find alternatives or to successfully challenge their failure. When there are only 2 internet providers or one massive healthcare system, you have no leverage.
And nowhere is this consolidation and corrosive effect more visible or more terrifying than in the commodification of health.
The sources specifically point out that venture capitalists and massive corporate entities buying up local hospitals, doctor practices, and medical organizations, they've fundamentally corrupted the mission of medicine.
The priority has shifted entirely. Patient care used to be the explicit, non-negotiable #1 priority.
Now profits are #1,
driving every single decision.
From the type of equipment they buy to the length of a doctor. This financialization has created an environment where trust is eroded and costs skyrocket without a corresponding quality.
And we can see this through the UPMC example mentioned in the source. In places like Pittsburgh, the healthcare system is just dominated by these massive, towering corporate entities.
They aren't just local hospitals anymore. They are sprawling, financially aggressive corporate empires.
And that financial burden is staggering, especially for those of us who are self-employed or don't have a big corporate plan.
The sources recount the anecdote of a self-employed family of 4 paying a ridiculous premium, at one point $2,000 a month.
$2,000 a month, just for basic health.
And that cost, which is substantial, does not guarantee quality care. It just guarantees access to a limited, expensive network.
And this massive premium is paid largely out of fear.
Exact. Corporate health entities expertly instill this fear of catastrophic financial ruin.
The idea that if you don't have health insurance, you will just drop dead or bankrupt your family the day you get sick.
And that fear forces people to pay exorbitant rates, even if they're healthy and don't use the services enough to warrant the cost. It's a protection racket disguised as preventative care.
And the loss of trust ties directly into the visual representation. That feeling described in the source material of driving downtown, seeing the massive, modern glass UPLE buildings.
And thinking,
I probably pay for that elevator. It just powerfully illustrates the disconnect. It's the feeling of excessive visible corporate wealth being funded directly by your crippling monthly premium while your actual service might be lackluster.
And it impacts the doctor-patient relationship itself. The sources claim patients don't trust their doctor anymore because they feel they're just being pushed toward pills, expensive tests, or unnecessary programs.
Mandated by the corporate owners who bought the practice.
The patient is no longer a person to be healed. They're simply a component to maximize the revenue stream of the corporate.
And if that essential system wasn't enough financial friction, the pandemic compounded things by completely ruining the accepted social standard of tipping culture.
Ah, yes, tip.
Tip creep, pervasive.
It means the expectation to tip everyone, everywhere, for the most minimal or transactional. It's moved way beyond rewarding restaurant service.
And now it infiltrates every automated kiosk. The source provides the perfect, absurd example. Walking into a movie theater, paying $12 for a bucket of popcorn.
A transaction that involves the cashier simply handing you the pre-popped item.
And then being presented with a mandatory tip screen on the digital terminal.
This is where the outrage comes from. The implication is that this tipping expectation is, well,
because companies are strategically not paying their people a living wage and expecting the customer to pay for it.
Right. Tipping has ceased being a reward for exceptional service and has morphed into an enforced mandatory subsidy for substandard corporate.
And it successfully shifts the burden of payroll responsibility onto you, the unwilling and often already financially strained consumer.
All right, shifting gears. Let's look at how this systemic automation and corporatism has invaded the one system that should, theoretically, be based on merit, the hiring.
Automation and hiring has replaced human gatekeepers with these deeply flawed, opaque algorithms.
Jobs that used to be secured through applications, interviews, human interaction, now they require online submission into an applicant tracking system, an ATS.
Where AI acts as the first and often impenetrable gate.
And the system isn't filtering for actual competence or human potential. It's filtering purely for keyword compliance and arbitrary metrics.
Which has created this massive irrational experience barrier. The sources highlight the experience of having years of applicable current experience, but being initially rejected because the applicant lacked a college degree.
And this is where the algorithm just reveals its own stupidity. In rapidly changing fields like web development or data analysis, a degree you got 10 years ago is often totally irrelevant.
The entire landscape has changed multiple times since graduation.
Right. Yet the algorithm, being purely prescriptive, prioritizes the decade-old irrelevant degree over current applicable, demonstrable experience.
But the truly alarming and detailed story involves a son with a business degree and his teacher's observations about the deep dysfunction of this AI hiring.
This is a wild story. The teacher was running courses to help students navigate these hiring systems and noticed a consistent pattern. The system was rejecting highly qualified individuals.
People who had the real-world skills.
While confusingly accepting unqualified candidates who simply knew how to game the keyword match.
So to test this hypothesis that the algorithm was just just fundamentally broken.
The teacher created a perfectly tailored fake resume. This resume was meticulously designed to hit every single qualification the job did.
Using the exact phrasing, all the buzzwords.
And what happened?
It still got rejected.
Still got rejected. This experiment proved that the algorithms are rejecting candidates for unknown but not related to competence, keywords, experience.
The failure is baked into the technology. You don't even get the chance to talk to a human who could exercise judgment.
The system actively screens out the exact most qualified people companies need.
It's corporate self-sabotage disguised as efficient. And this flaw isn't just in HR. It's corrupting the foundation of the modern internet itself.
The sources accuse Google of playing a major active role in the inshitification of the internet.
How so?
Google, particularly with its reliance on aggressive AI models like Gemini and its push for zero-click results, is accused of chasing maximum profit for themselves by cannibalizing the open web.
By prioritizing its own proprietary answers and content summarized by AI, it effectively tossed a hand grenade into the wider web ecosystem.
The ecosystem that small businesses and content creators rely on.
We need to explain how this financially cripples small business because it's a critical piece of this puzzle.
Well, small businesses that rely on SEO-optimized online stores, niche blogs, organic search traffic, they depend on Google sending users to their external website.
Right, for ad revenue, for sale.
But if Google's AI summarizes the answer directly in the search results, a zero-click result, or prioritizes its own content, the small business gets zero traffic.
Their visibility is just destroyed.
This forces many small operations that rely on that organic ecosystem to severely cut back or potentially shut down entirely because their primary customer acquisition funnel has been severed.
By a corporate giant prioritizing its internal revenue stream over the health of the broader internet.
It's the ultimate corporate move. Destroy the environment you rely on for short-term internal profit gain, resulting in a less useful, less diverse, and more corporate-controlled web for everyone else.
And this overreach leads us to the source's call for a systemic change.
The belief is clear. Corporations with great power should face great checks and balances.
It's a fundamental democratic idea. Concentrated power requires concentrated oversight.
And if these powerful corporations are allowed to continue destroying potential competitors, eliminating human jobs through faulty automation ratings they control,
like the search engine,
the inshitification will only accelerate. The cynical conclusion from the source material is that the current lack of checks is
the system relies on politicians being financially paid off to look the other way,
allowing maximum profit extraction for the corporation, regardless of the societal cost.
And this whole process isn't just confined to digital interfaces or corporate boardroom. It has deeply impacted our physical social work.
The sources highlight a dramatic decline in the physical shopping experience since the pandemic. It makes everyday errands a frustrating exercise.
The fundamental convenience is just gone. We see the disappearance of massive customer service amenities, 24-hour stores.
Walmart being the primary example.
They disappeared post-pandemic, forcing schedules into narrower windows, increasing crowds and friction.
And the actual act of shopping has become so difficult due to a profound mismanagement of priorities within the
visual described in the sources is so relatable. You walk into a store and find employees stocking shelves, not by putting items out,
but by dropping entire pallets in the middle of the aisle, blocking access.
And compounding that is the presence of the curbside pickup staff, running around with their carts, taking up aisle space,
and often acting annoyed when actual in-store customers try to shop around them.
The infrastructure of the store has been repurposed to prioritize efficiency for online orders, often sacrificing the physical experience for the customer who made the effort to be physically present.
And this systemic quality decline extends to dining out, where the sources note that the bar for acceptable good food and service is dramatically lower than it was a decade ago.
We've just accepted mediocrity, high prices, and rushed service as the new standard.
There's even a specific mention that cheap, high-quality buffets, especially in places like Vegas, seem to have disappeared. Another casualty of efficiency cuts that eliminate consumer value.
But here's where we get to the core social impact, which is, I think, arguably the most disturbing symptom of this systemic failure.
The sharp decline in social interaction and fundamental decency since the pandemic lockdown.
It's the feeling of increased social savagery.
People are described in the sources as outwardly mean, antagonistic, and proudly uninformed. The willingness to engage in conflict over trivial issues just skyrockets.
Which leads to a profound erosion and loss of the basic social contract.
That unspoken agreement to be civil and polite in public.
And the sources relate this back to the experience of being locked down for 2 years, comparing post-pandemic public behavior to how children need to be explicitly taught basic decency and sharing when they first go to kindergarten.
We were all collectively isolated, and we seemingly forgot the fundamental soft skills required to navigate a complex crowd.
The 2 years of hostility, fear, and just being atomized translated into a public sphere where antagonism is now the default setting.
And this loss of decency manifests in so many ways. People are angrier drivers, seemingly seeking confrontation.
And more tragically, younger people are struggling with a deep lack of purpose or meaning, compounded by the inability to rely on a stable job market, which we just talked about, is actively broken by faulty algorithms or dependable social systems.
If the key structures of society, employment, service, even human interaction are actively breaking, it makes perfect sense that meaning and stability would erode for those just entering adulthood.
The sources suggest that the pandemic might have been about something much bigger than just the public health crisis.
That its ultimate long-term effect was about permanently breaking key social infrastructure, and things are not snapping back to normal as quickly as the corporate controllers might wish.
But the sources do offer a fascinating, almost hopeful theory about how society might begin to recover from this.
Focusing on the future vision of technology, specifically the idea of the two internets.
Okay, what does that mean?
The prediction is driven by the inevitability of the current corporate. The sources predict that we will eventually have two distinct versions of the web operating concurrently.
The first one is the one we're stuck in now.
The entirely corporate-controlled, inshitified, AI-infused, ad-infused fever dream. This space will become so toxic, so monetized, and so unreliable that it will effectively become useless for genuine human connection or information gathering.
And the second internet.
This will be a more private, old-school internet. Think dial-up era community boards and personal page. A space where individuals talk to each other without all the bullshit, the surveillance, and the corporate monetization.
A space for genuine human interaction built on trust and curiosity.
Unmolested by maximizing profit mode. And that analog longing might manifest physically as well.
The sources muse that in 10 years, Gen Z might force a complete social return to the 1990s aesthetic.
Technology will still exist, AI, social media, everything, but it will be used sparingly and intentionally.
Because the simple, painful lesson learned over the last decade is that society went to shit when people were connected 24/7.
This return to analog means having the technology available, but consciously deciding not to overuse it, valuing offline competence, local community, and authentic in-person interaction over constant, toxic connectivity.
It's a move back toward permanence and control.
So if we look back at the core drivers of this pervasive decline, the inshitification of everything really breaks down into three central pillars that permeate every aspect of daily life.
First, we see the rise of corporatism, which actively replaced customer and patient care as the #1 priority, leading to essential services, from banks to hospitals, operating at or below the bare minimum required for public safety and convenience.
Second, unchecked automation created competency failures, especially in high-stakes areas like hiring and utility management, making basic human tasks and error resolution impossible because human judgment was intentionally removed from the loop.
And third, the over-reliance on mandatory connectivity made us vulnerable to digital obsolescence, corporate control, and ultimately a sharp erosion of the social contract when those mandatory connections were stressed or severed during periods like the pandemic.
It's a systemic breakdown where you, the consumer and the citizen, are reduced to a data point and a revenue stream. Given this pervasive, accelerating systemic decline and the growing incompetence we see in essential sectors like health, utilities, and employment, we leave you with one final provocative question based on the observations raised by these sources.
If the systems we rely on continue to be broken by profit maximization and unchecked corporate power, thereby increasing friction and decreasing reliability, what is the single most effective fundamental analog skill? Be it car repair, intricate gardening and food preservation, or a deep understanding of local non-digital finance and barter that you, the learner, should master right now to gain control back and build resilience against the inshitified system. Something to consider as you prepare for a less competent, more frustrating future.